The air in the Memphis Auditorium on that crisp autumn evening practically hummed with an electricity you could taste. It wasn't just the late October chill outside. It was the raw, undeniable anticipation for one man, Elvis Presley. His name was whispered, shouted, and sung by thousands of eager fans packed to the rafters. Girls in their Sunday best dresses clutched signs with hearts and declarations of love. Guys, trying to act cool, tapped their feet restlessly, secretly just as excited. Backstage in his small, slightly stuffy dressing room, Elvis was a whirlwind of controlled energy. He ran a hand through his perfectly sculpted pompadour, the jet-black strands gleaming under the harsh lights. His custom-made stage suit, a striking ensemble of deep blue with glittering silver embroidery, hung ready on a hook. It felt snug, perhaps a little too snug, but that was the point. It was supposed to show off his lean, athletic build. He needed to look sharp every inch. "The king, you ready? E?" Scotty Moore, his guitarist, leaned against the doorframe, guitar case in hand. Scotty always had this calm, steady presence that Elvis appreciated. Bill Black, the bassist, was already tuning up, his fingers flying over the strings. DJ Fontana, the drummer, sat quietly tapping out a rhythm on his knees. The band was a well-oiled machine, tight and powerful, just like Elvis liked it. Elvis grinned, a flash of white teeth that could melt icebergs. "Ready as I'll ever be, Scotty. Tonight's gonna be a wild one. I can feel it." He pulled on his suit pants, feeling the stretch of the fabric across his thighs. He'd gained a little muscle lately from all the touring, all the dancing. He spun around, trying out a quick hip swivel. The material pulled but held good. He planned to really let loose tonight. He had a few new moves. He wanted to try some extra spins, some deeper knee bends. He wanted to give them a show they'd never forget. He looked at his reflection in the mirror, not seeing just a young man from Tupelo anymore, but the performer, the icon, the guy who made the girls scream and the parents worry. There was a thrill in that power, a dizzying sense of responsibility. Every move, every note, every glance was scrutinized, devoured. He loved it. He lived for it. His manager, Colonel Tom Parker, waddled in a cigar, clamped between his teeth, his usual placid expression unchanging. "Full house, son. They're champing at the bit." Elvis just nodded, adjusted his microphone, and took a deep breath. The scent of hairspray and old wood filled his nostrils. He could hear the low roar of the crowd, a hungry beast waiting to be fed. His heart hammered in his chest, a familiar rhythm of excitement and a tiny tremor of nerves. But it wasn't fear. It was the thrill of the unknown, the anticipation of connection. "All right, boys," he said, turning to his band, his voice low but firm. "Let's give 'em everything we got." He walked towards the curtain, the band following close behind. The lights beyond the velvet seemed impossibly bright, the sounds of the crowd impossibly loud. He felt the energy radiating through the stage floor, through his very bones. This was it. This was what he was born to do. He heard the announcer's voice booming through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for the one, the only, Elvis Presley." The roar that erupted was deafening. It was a wave of pure, unadulterated adoration that hit him full force. He took a final breath, smoothed down his jacket, and stepped out into the blinding spotlight. The crowd exploded. Flashbulbs popped like fireflies. The screaming was so loud he could barely hear the opening chords of his first song. He flashed them his famous, dazzling smile and felt the power surge through him. Tonight was going to be a night to remember. He just had no idea how memorable it would truly be. The moment Elvis hit the stage, the Memphis Auditorium transformed. It wasn't just a venue anymore. It was a living, breathing entity, fueled by the energy he poured into it. He launched straight into Jailhouse Rock, his voice a powerful, gravelly rumble that soared above the din of the crowd. His legs were a blur, his hips swiveling with a mesmerizing rhythm that had every girl in the audience practically swooning. He was a force of nature, a hurricane of charisma. He moved across the stage like a panther, lithe and dangerous, yet with an underlying playfulness that made him utterly irresistible. He'd lean into the microphone, his eyes closed, pouring every ounce of emotion into a lyric, then suddenly snap open, making eye contact with a girl in the front row, sending a shiver down her spine. The screams intensified. Scotty Moore's guitar riffs were sharp and precise, cutting through the air like lightning. Bill Black's bass laid down a deep, steady groove that you could feel in your chest. DJ Fontana was a machine, keeping the beat tight and driving. They were more than a band. They were an extension of Elvis, anticipating his every move, flowing with his boundless energy. Elvis felt the music deep in his bones. It wasn't just a performance. It was a conversation, a shared experience. Could feel the audience reacting to every twitch of his eyebrow, every thrust of his hip. He fed off their screams, their applause, their sheer joy. He spun, he dipped, he slid across the stage on his knees, then sprang back up effortlessly. Custom-made suit, usually so restrictive, felt like a second skin moving with him, stretching with every powerful gyration. He wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand, grinning. "How y'all doing tonight, Memphis?" he drawled. And another wave of screams washed over him. He loved this. He loved the raw connection, the way he could make thousands of people feel like he was singing just for them. He launched into Hound Dog, his voice becoming a growl, his movements even more frantic. This was the song where he really let loose, where the Elvis the Pelvis legend was truly born. He knew the parents hated it, knew the moral guardians wrung their hands, but the kids loved it. They loved the rebellion, the raw sexuality, the sheer audacity of it all. He started his signature move, the leg shake. First one leg, then the other, a shimmy that started at his hips and vibrated all the way down to his feet. He closed his eyes, lost in the rhythm, letting the music possess him. Pushed himself harder, wanting to give them more, to push the boundaries, to truly electrify the room. He bent his knees deep almost to the floor, then snapped back up, his body a blur of motion. The suit fabric pulled taut, stretched to its absolute limit. Across his powerful thighs, he felt a slight strain but ignored it. He was too deep in the moment, too lost in the song, too focused on the fever pitch of the crowd. He was flying high, untouchable, the king of rock and roll. The roar of the crowd was a physical force, pushing him higher, urging him on. He was soaked in sweat, his chest heaving, but he felt invincible. He hit a high note, held it, then transitioned into a rapid-fire series of leg movements, each one more exaggerated than the last. He heard the collective gasp of the audience, a sign that he was doing exactly what he intended, captivating them completely. He finished Hound Dog with a flourish, striking a pose, one leg bent, one arm outstretched, microphone stand tilted. The applause was deafening, a solid wall of sound that vibrated through the stage. Took a bow, a deep, sweeping bow, then straightened up, his chest still heaving. He caught his breath, beaming at the crowd, feeling like he could conquer the world. He was living his dream. Every single night he was Elvis. The energy in the auditorium was at an absolute peak. After the roaring success of Hound Dog, Elvis moved into Don't Be Cruel, a slightly slower but no less electrifying number that allowed him to showcase his incredible vocal range and smooth, effortless charm. He swayed, he crooned, he locked eyes with individual fans, making them feel like they were the only person in the room. The girls screamed, the boys whistled, and everyone felt the undeniable pull of his magnetism. As the song built to its crescendo, Elvis felt an urge to really hit a particular note, to pour all his emotion into it and combine it with one of his most dynamic moves. He decided to really lean into a deep knee bend, almost a lunge, followed by a sudden powerful snap back up, coupled with a full-body shimmy. It was a move that always got the crowd screaming, shooting his incredible athleticism and the raw power behind his seemingly effortless dancing. He took a deep breath, the spotlight hot on his face. The music swelled, Scotty's guitar solo wailing mournfully, then building back up to the main melody. Elvis moved to the center of the stage, his eyes blazing, completely immersed. He hit the note, a long, soulful sound that resonated through the packed hall. As he held it, he dropped into that deep knee bend, his left leg bending almost to the floor, his right leg extended out, his weight shifting, his hips thrusting forward. The fabric of his custom-made blue suit, which had felt snug before, was now stretched to its absolute limit across his left thigh. He felt it then, not a gentle tug, but a sharp, distinct rip. It wasn't a subtle tearing sound. It was a clear, unmistakable crip that cut through the music, even through the screaming of the crowd. For just a split second, his heart seemed to stop. His eyes, which had been closed in concentration, snapped open. He could feel it immediately, a sudden, undeniable draft against his leg. The fabric, which had just moments before been a tight, protective shell, was now gaping open. He instinctively tried to straighten up, but the momentum of his move was too great. He completed the full body, shimmy, his face still plastered with his signature, rock and roll snarl, but internally a cold wave of panic washed over him. He glanced down, a quick, almost imperceptible flick of his eyes. Sure enough, there it was. A gaping tear, starting from the seam of his left inner thigh and extending upwards a good 6 or 7 inches long. Through the dark blue fabric, a flash of white shirt, or perhaps even his skin, was now visible. "Oh no!" The thought screamed through his mind, louder than any of the thousands of screaming fans. "My pants are ripped, on stage in front of everyone." He finished the song's ending, forcing his face to maintain its usual confident expression, but his mind was racing a million miles an hour. He could feel his leg exposed to the cool stage air, could feel the loose fabric flapping slightly as he moved. He tried to angle his body away from the crowd subtly, so they wouldn't notice, but it was a huge rip, and he was Elvis Presley, lit up by 100 spotlights. Someone had to have seen it. A few gasps rippled through the front rows, then a few more. His stomach clenched. They had seen it, the horror, the sheer unadulterated embarrassment. He was Elvis Presley, the symbol of cool, the epitome of style, and his pants had just ripped right down the middle, live on stage in front of thousands of people, and who knew how many flashing cameras. He felt his cheeks flush hot despite the cool draft on his leg. This wasn't part of the plan. This wasn't the kind of memorable moment he'd intended. What in the world was he going to do? The music was still playing, the crowd was still roaring, but a new, uncomfortable energy was starting to spread through the room. This was a nightmare. The music played on the band, seemingly oblivious, hammering out the final notes of "Don't Be Cruel" with their usual precision. But for Elvis, time had slowed to a crawl. Every beat of the drum was an agonizing reminder of the gaping hole in his trousers that went against everything he stood for as a performer. His fans deserved a full show, a perfect show. But how could he be perfect with a giant rip in his pants? He tried to subtly adjust his stance, angling his body away from the worst of the tear. He placed his hand casually over his thigh, trying to cover it, but the tear was too long, too wide. It was impossible to hide. Every movement, every step, every swivel of his hips only seemed to make it more obvious. The fabric flapping loosely, he could feel the heat rising in his face. This was humiliating. He was supposed to be the coolest man on the planet, the idol, the king. And now he was a joke, a spectacle of wardrobe malfunction. He imagined the headlines, "Elvis's pants can't handle his moves. The king's clothes rip." The thought alone made him want to crawl into a hole. He risked another quick glance at the crowd. A few girls in the front row were openly pointing, giggling behind their hands. Their faces were a mix of shock and amusement, but beneath that he could see a flicker of concern, almost pity. In some eyes, pity that was worse than the laughter. He was Elvis Presley. He didn't need pity. He looked at Scotty, then Bill, then DJ. They were focused on their instruments, still riding the high of the performance. They hadn't noticed yet, or if they had, they were professional enough not to show it. That gave him a tiny bit of breathing room. He was alone in this, for now the band started the intro to the next song, Teddy Bear. It was a slower, more sentimental tune, a chance for him to catch his breath. But his breath was still caught in his throat. He had a choice to make right now. Could try to be discreet for the rest of the show, stand mostly still, keep his legs together, and hope that the dim lighting and the sheer excitement of the crowd would somehow make the problem disappear. But that wasn't him. He couldn't sing Teddy Bear without leaning into it, without some gentle swaying, some smooth leg movements. He couldn't be a statue. That would disappoint his fans more than a ripped suit. Ever could he? He was known for his moves. His energy to hold back now would be like cutting off his own arm. Or he could acknowledge it. But how? Make a joke on Elvis. He was suave, confident, almost regal on stage. To suddenly break character and draw attention to his wardrobe malfunction felt like admitting defeat. But what if it doesn't have to be? What if I could turn it into something else? He felt the surge of something not quite confidence yet, but a fierce determination. He wouldn't let this beat him. He wouldn't let it diminish him. He was an entertainer. And a true entertainer knew how to make even a mistake part of the show. He looked out at the sea of faces, a mix of concern, confusion, and curiosity. He saw the adoration there, the love. They weren't judging him. They were just waiting to see what he would do. And suddenly he knew he wouldn't hide. He would lean in. He would make this tear a part of the legend. Took a deep breath, and a tiny, almost imperceptible smirk tugged at the corner of his lips. The internal battle was over. The show somehow would go on with the decision made. A strange calm settled over Elvis. The initial panic receded, replaced by a surge of defiance and a mischievous glint in his eye. Teddy Bear was playing its gentle melody. A stark contrast to the internal chaos he'd just experienced. Could feel the tear, the cool air on his leg, but instead of trying to hide it, he started to think about how to use it. He began the song, his voice as smooth and velvety as ever, but something was different, a subtle shift in his demeanor. He wasn't just singing, he was performing an elaborate, unspoken dance with his own predicament. He decided to play it cool at first, a sly smile, almost a secret between him and the audience. He started to move, not wildly, but with an exaggerated smoothness. He swayed his hips just a little bit more, letting the tear in his left pant leg become momentarily visible, then quickly pulling it back with a subtle shift of his weight. It was like a magician's trick, a flash of something unexpected. A ripple of low laughter started to spread through the crowd. It wasn't mocking laughter. It was curious, amused, and perhaps a little delighted. They were starting to get it. They were in on the secret. Elvis saw the reaction, and it fueled him. He winked at a girl in the front row who was stifling a giggle, and her eyes widened in surprise and pleasure. He leaned into the microphone, his voice a low purr. "You know this Memphis heat," he drawled, casting a quick pointed glance down at his leg. "It just gets to you. Makes a fellow want to air himself out a bit." The laughter swelled. It was still contained, but louder now, punctuated by delighted squeals. He hadn't stopped the show, hadn't freaked out. He was acknowledging it playfully, making them a part of the moment. Scotty, Bill, and DJ, who had been focused on the song, now started to notice. Scotty looked over, his eyes wide as he saw the tear. He almost missed a chord. Bill's eyebrows shot up. DJ, usually so stoic, let out a small, quiet chuckle from behind his drum kit. They looked at each other, then back at Elvis, a silent conversation passing between them. "He's doing it. He's turning it around." Elvis began to incorporate the rip into his movements more deliberately. When he bent his left knee, he let the tear fully show for a beat longer. When he swayed, he allowed the fabric to flap a little, almost like a playful invitation. He wasn't trying to hide it. He was pouting it, owning it. It was like he was saying, "Yeah, my pants ripped. So what? I'm still Elvis, and I'm still giving you the best darn show you've ever seen." The atmosphere in the auditorium shifted completely. What could have been an embarrassing disaster was quickly morphing into something unique, something special. The audience wasn't just watching a concert anymore. They were witnessing a master class in improvisation, a testament to true showmanship. They were captivated by his boldness, his willingness to be vulnerable, and yet remain utterly in control. He finished Teddy Bear, letting a final, subtle hip swivel expose the tear, one last time before his hand casually covered it. The applause was thunderous, mixed with a crescendo of laughter and delighted shouts. It wasn't just for the song or his voice. It was for him, for his quick wit, for his charm, for his ability to transform an awkward moment into a moment of pure, unadulterated entertainment. Took a short bow, a mischievous grin playing on his lips. He could feel the rush of adrenaline, not from panic anymore, but from the sheer thrill of pulling it off. He had stared embarrassment in the face, and he had won. He hadn't just recovered. He had elevated the performance, and the audience, now fully invested in this unexpected twist, was ready for whatever he would do next. The applause for Teddy Bear was still ringing in his ears as Elvis launched into Heartbreak Hotel, but this wasn't just another song in the setlist anymore. This was a statement. This was where he fully committed to making the tear part of the legend. The nervous energy he'd felt moments before had completely vanished, replaced by a playful confidence that bordered on mischievous. As the mournful guitar intro began, Elvis didn't just stand and sing. He moved with a new swagger, a deliberate exaggeration of his signature hip movements. With every swivel, every thrust, the tear in his left pant leg would flash into view, a dark shadow against his lighter inner thigh, then disappear. He wasn't just moving his hips, he was doing a subtle comedic dance with his wardrobe malfunction. The audience roared with laughter and cheers. They weren't laughing at him. They were laughing with him, delighted by his audacity. He saw a few photographers in the pit lower their cameras, not to stop shooting, but to wipe tears of laughter from their eyes. This wasn't just a concert, it was an event, a story unfolding right before their eyes. Elvis leaned into the microphone, his voice a low growl, but his eyes twinkled. "You know, folks," he said, pausing just long enough for the band to lay down a steady rhythm. "Some folks say my moves are so hot, they can set a stage on fire." He paused for effect, letting a knowing grin spread across his face. "Turns out," he continued, gesturing vaguely towards his left leg with a flick of his wrist, "they can even rip a hole right out of my pants." The auditorium erupted. A wave of thunderous applause and delighted screams washed over him. People were stomping their feet, whistling, shouting his name. He had done it. He had taken the most embarrassing moment of his career and turned it into his greatest triumph of showmanship. Scotty, Bill, and DJ were now fully in on it. Scotty, usually so stoic, was grinning ear to ear as he laid down his guitar licks, his head bobbing to the rhythm. Bill Black was swaying with extra gusto, his bass line radiating a newfound joy. Even DJ Fontana was visibly chuckling as he hit his drums, shaking his head in amusement and admiration. The band wasn't just playing music. They were part of this spontaneous, hilarious, and utterly captivating theater. Elvis continued to sing, but his movements were a testament to his quick thinking. He'd drop into a deep crouch, exposing the tear for a second, then straighten up with a flourish. He'd spin, letting the fabric fly, then pull it back in. It was like a peekaboo game, and the audience was loving every second of it. He even incorporated a little skip, a kind of jaunty bounce that emphasized the tear, without being vulgar. It was all charm, all humor, all Elvis. He worked the crowd, winking, smiling, shaking hands with the lucky few in the front row. He made eye contact with people in the balcony, sharing the joke, making everyone feel included in this incredible, unscripted moment. He was no longer just the cool, untouchable icon. He was also the relatable, funny guy who could laugh at himself. This vulnerability paradoxically made him even more powerful, even more beloved. As Heartbreak Hotel drew to a close, the energy in the room was electric. People were on their feet, not just swaying, but cheering, clapping, and roaring their approval. This was more than just applause. It was an acknowledgement of his brilliance, his resilience, his sheer, undeniable talent for entertaining. He ended the song with a dramatic pose, one hand on his hip, the other holding the microphone. and this time he deliberately allowed the tear to be fully visible, almost as a final punchline. He held the pose, a knowing smirk on his face as the cheers reached a fever pitch. He had taken a moment of potential disaster and spun it into pure gold. He hadn't just survived, he had triumphed. And the legend of Elvis, the quick-witted, charming king, had just grown a little bit bigger. The final notes of Heartbreak Hotel faded, but the roar of the crowd did not. It intensified, becoming a deafening crescendo of cheers, whistles, and shouts of "Elvis! Elvis!" The applause was like a physical force vibrating through the stage floor, making his very bones hum. He stood there, microphone in hand, chest heaving, soaked in sweat, and still with a noticeable tear in his blue suit pants. He took a deep, sweeping bow, a dramatic flourish that acknowledged not just the song, but the entire unexpected spectacle. When he straightened up, he put his hand over his heart, feigning humility, but a playful glint danced in his eyes. "Well, I'll tell ya, Memphis," he drawled, his voice a little hoarse from the effort. "This ain't exactly how I planned the show to go tonight." Another wave of laughter and cheers erupted. Paused, letting it wash over him, feeding off their energy. He then gestured vaguely down at his leg, rolling his eyes in mock exasperation. "Guess these pants just couldn't handle the king's moves, huh?" The crowd went absolutely wild. This was exactly what they wanted. His acknowledgement, his humor, his realness. They weren't just fans anymore. They were co-conspirators in a truly epic moment. They were there, they saw it, and they were part of the story. He leaned into the microphone again, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "Don't you worry, though plenty more songs where that came from, and I got plenty more moves, too. Even if my tailor's gonna have something to say about 'em later." The laughter swelled again, even louder this time. He was charming them, disarming them, making them fall even deeper in love with him. He wasn't just a perfect, untouchable idol anymore. He was a human being who could stumble, laugh at himself, and still command an entire arena. This vulnerability was powerful. He straightened up, his smile wide and genuine. "But seriously, folks, y'all are the best. Thank you for coming out tonight. You make it all worth it." He held out his hand, inviting the crowd's energy, basking in their adoration. He then smoothly transitioned into his next song. All shook up despite the torn pants. His energy didn't wane. If anything, it felt amplified. He moved with a new freedom, a new sense of liberation, almost as if the tear had broken some invisible barrier. He still made subtle, playful acknowledgments of the rip with his movements. But it was no longer about the shock. It was about the shared experience, the inside joke. The rest of the show continued with an almost magical quality. The audience felt a deeper connection, a shared secret with their idol. They weren't just watching a performance, they were part of a legend in the making. Every hip swivel, every knee bend, every powerful vocal became infused with the memory of the torn pants. It was a symbol of his raw, untamed energy, his spontaneity, his ability to turn any challenge into a triumph. When the final song ended and the lights came up, the applause was deafening and sustained. Elvis took his final bow, his chest heaving, a triumphant smile on his face. He knew he had given them a show they'd never forget, not just for the music, but for the sheer, unexpected magic of it all. As he walked off stage, the roar of the crowd echoing in his ears, he felt a profound sense of exhilaration. He had faced a moment of potential disaster and turned it into one of his most legendary performances. The king had proven once again why he reigned supreme. The moment Elvis stepped off stage, the adrenaline that had been pumping through his veins for the last hour and a half began to recede, leaving him feeling utterly drained, but profoundly exhilarated. He leaned against the rough brick wall backstage, taking a deep, shaky breath, wiping sweat from his brow with a towel offered by a stagehand. The roar of the crowd, still audible through the thick walls, was a sweet, lingering echo of his triumph. Scotty Moore clapped him on the shoulder, a wide grin splitting his face. "Well, Ear," he chuckled, "you certainly gave him a show tonight, didn't you?" He gestured towards the still gaping tear in Elvis's pants. Elvis looked down at the ripped fabric, a wry smile playing on his lips. "Yeah," he said, shaking his head. "Didn't exactly plan that one, did I?" But there was no hint of embarrassment now, only a quiet pride. Bill Black joined them, shaking his head in amusement. "For a second you were going to stop, Elvis. Never seen you hesitate like that." "Nah," Elvis scoffed, pushing off the wall. "Couldn't do that, not for a little thing like this." He motioned at his leg. "Had to keep the show going. But man, for a minute there, my heart almost jumped out of my chest." Colonel Parker, who had been watching from the wings with his usual poker face, finally approached. For a moment, Elvis braced himself for a lecture about the importance of proper stage attire. To his surprise, the colonel just stood there, cigar still clamped in his teeth, a rare, almost imperceptible smirk tugging at the corner of his lips. "Well," son Parker rumbled, his voice gruff but with an underlying tone of satisfaction, "that'll certainly be a night they won't forget. Might even be good for business." Elvis barked out a laugh. "Good for business, Colonel. My pants are ripped down to my knee." "Precisely," Parker said, puffing on his cigar. "Authenticity, spontaneity makes them feel like they're seeing the real thing, not some perfectly polished doll. They saw you. They saw your spirit. And they saw you handle it like a pro." The words resonated with Elvis. Parker, for all his focus on money, understood the essence of public perception. He was right. It wasn't about the rip. It was about the recovery. It was about how he responded. "You were brilliant, Elvis," DJ Fontana said, coming up behind them, his drumstick still in hand. "Just brilliant. You turned it right around." Hearing it from the band, his closest confidants on stage, meant a lot. They were witnesses to the initial shock and then to his decision to own it. Their shared laughter, their shared energy had been crucial. In that moment, Elvis finally felt a deep sense of relief wash over him. The initial dread had been intense, a cold fear that he had ruined his reputation, made a fool of himself. But now, looking back, he realized he hadn't. He had cemented his legend. He had proven his mettle. He wasn't just a singer who could hit the notes and do the moves. He was an entertainer who could handle anything, spontaneous and quick-witted, with a natural charm that transcended any wardrobe mishap. He peeled off his jacket, feeling the sticky sweat against his skin. His tailor was definitely going to have his work cut out for him with this suit, but a part of him almost didn't want it fixed. It was a battle scar, a badge of honor. As he slowly started to change, the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. This wasn't just a concert. This was the concert, the one where Elvis's pants ripped, the one where he didn't miss a beat, the one where he turned embarrassment into an unforgettable, heartwarming spectacle. He smiled to himself. Tonight he hadn't just entertained, he'd created a story, a legend, and it felt good, really good. The next morning, the story of Elvis Presley's ripped pants wasn't just on the lips of those who attended the concert. It was splashed across newspaper headlines and buzzing on radio waves across the nation. Far from being a scandal or a cause for embarrassment, it was hailed as a testament to his raw energy, his quick wit, and his undeniable charisma. "Elvis rips EMUP. Kings moves TOOHOTFORHIS pants," screamed one Memphis headline, accompanied by a blurred but unmistakable photo of Elvis mid-swivel, the tear clearly visible. It praised his unflappable stage presence and his hilarious recovery. Another newspaper, usually more conservative in its coverage of the controversial rock and roller, noted Presley, often criticized for his suggestive gyrations, proved last night that even a wardrobe malfunction can't deter the ultimate showman. His spontaneous humor and unyielding energy transformed a potential mishap into a moment of true theater. Radio disc jockeys spent their morning shows recounting the tale, playing snippets of the live concert, and mimicking Elvis's self-deprecating jokes. "Can you believe it, folks?" one DJ exclaimed. "The King's so cool. His clothes just can't keep up. And he didn't even flinch. Telegrams and letters started pouring into RCA Records and Elvis's management office. They weren't complaints. They were expressions of pure adoration. Fans wrote about how they loved his authenticity, how it made him seem more human, more accessible. "Dear Mr. Presley," one letter read, penned in neat, girlish handwriting. "I was there last night. When your pants ripped, I thought you would stop, but you just kept going. You were so brave and funny, it made me love you even more. You're the best Elvis Meir." Another, from an older woman who usually worried about her daughters going to his concerts, surprising her, stated, "I must admit, Mr. Presley, I've had my reservation, but seeing you handle such an unexpected moment with such grace and good humor last an eye." It highlighted something that many had perhaps only seen glimpses of before. Elvis's genuine personality beneath the dazzling stage persona. It showed he wasn't just a product of slick marketing or raw talent. He was a quick, thinking, charming individual who could connect with his audience on a deeper level. He sat in his hotel room later that morning, sipping coffee and flipping through the newspaper clippings Colonel Parker had brought him. He couldn't help but smile. The embarrassment he'd felt on stage had evaporated completely, replaced by a sense of vindication. He had feared being mocked, but instead he was being celebrated. "Well," Colonel Elvis said, handing a paper back, "looks like my torn breeches are bigger news than my new record." Parker merely grunted, a satisfied puff of cigar smoke escaping his lips. "Any publicity is good publicity, son, but this is gold. This tells folks you're real. You're not afraid to make a mistake, and you can laugh at yourself. That connects with people more than any perfect performance ever could." And he was right. The incident humanized him, broke down the barrier between the idol on stage and the people in the audience. It created a shared memory, a legendary moment that everyone would recount for years to come. It wasn't just a story about a rock star. It was a story about resilience, humor, and the power of embracing imperfection. Torn pants became a symbol, not of a flaw, but of his unparalleled, untamed showmanship. The legend of Elvis the King, who could rip his pants and still own the stage, was truly taking root. The ripped pants incident in Memphis wasn't just a fleeting moment. It became an indelible part of the Elvis Presley legend. For years to come, it was the story people would recount, a knowing smile on their faces whenever his name came up. It was shorthand for his boundless energy, his spontaneity, and his remarkable ability to turn any situation into a triumphant spectacle. In subsequent performances, sometimes Elvis would offer a subtle nod to the infamous moment. Perhaps a particularly deep knee bend, followed by a playful glance down at his thigh and a shared, knowing smile with the audience. Sometimes a fan would shout, "Don't rip 'em, Elvis," and he'd chuckle, wink, and reply, "No promises, darlin'." These moves got a mind of their own. These small gestures deepened the bond with his fans, creating an intimate, almost conspiratorial connection. They were all in on the joke, all part of the shared history. The incident also subtly influenced how he was perceived. While he remained the king, the symbol of cool and rebellion, there was now an added layer of warmth and relatability. Parents, who had once frowned upon his suggestive moves, found themselves chuckling at the story of the torn pants, seeing him as less of a threat and more of a lovable rogue. He wasn't just an entertainer. He was a genuine person who could laugh at himself, a quality that resonated deeply with the American public. His stage clothes, while still flamboyant, were perhaps subtly adjusted by his tailors after that night, designed to withstand the sheer force of his dynamic movements. But the initial suit with its famous rip was carefully preserved, a silent testament to a night that almost went wrong but ended up being incredibly right. The story became a symbol of his career itself, facing unexpected challenges head-on and turning them into strengths. It reinforced the idea that Elvis was authentic, unscripted, and entirely himself on stage. He wasn't just performing. He was living the music, pouring every ounce of his being into it, even if it meant a wardrobe malfunction. And that raw, unbridled passion was what truly captivated millions. Years later, even when Elvis was older, when his music had evolved and when his live shows were grander, people still remembered the pants. It was a touchstone, a charming anecdote that encapsulated his youthful exuberance and his enduring showmanship. It taught everyone a valuable lesson. Sometimes the most perfect moments aren't planned at all. They emerge from vulnerability, from improvisation, and from the courage to laugh in the face of embarrassment. The heartwarming legacy of the torn pants was not just about a celebrity recovering from a mishap. It was about the power of human connection, the beauty of authenticity, and the joyful magic of laughter. It was a reminder that true legends aren't just about flawless perfection, but about embracing life's unexpected twists and turning them into tales that warm the heart and stand the test of time. Elvis Presley wasn't just the king of rock and roll. He was the king of the unexpected, the charming rogue who could tear his pants on stage and make you love him even more for it. And that, more than any gold record or sold-out show, was the true measure of his enduring legend.